Sue Ronan is with us to preview a two-legged playoff for the Republic of Ireland women's team against Georgia. Sue, this is a tricky one for them to prepare for, right? Because we've hammered Georgia. Like, this group of players know what it's like to hammer their opponents, and yet it is a playoff. So an early sending off, a slightly windy day or a dodgy pitch, and all of a sudden you're struggling. It's like, oh Jesus! So how do you prepare mentally for this group?
Yeah, good morning, boys. Look, I suppose these games have been a long time coming around, and the girls have been waiting for this for a long time. I think they'll be well prepared both mentally and tactically and physically. I think they will have got lots of learnings from playing against the top teams in the world in the previous group. They were playing second, third seeds in the world. So I think we had to be realistic in terms of the results against those teams. But we saw progression as the group went along, and the experiences that they gained there, they should be able to take into playing a so-called minnows like Georgia, and play the game professionally and go about their business professionally, and put them to the sword early on, and I expect them to do that.
Like, we do expect them to hammer them over the two legs, right?
Well, what's your definition of hammer? Look, I suppose we have hammered them the last two times we've played them. It was a 20-0 on the overall aggregate of the home and away games the last time we had them in the group, and the previous time before that, I was manager myself, and it was similar. It might have been 19 or 20. And they're shipping a lot of goals. Obviously, Georgia are against the top teams. I would expect nothing less, I guess, than a 6 or a 7. Certainly away, potentially more at home. But look, I think it's more about preparing, I suppose, with the game against either Wales or is it Bulgaria? I can't
Slovakia.
remember.
Slovakia or Wales, yeah.
Slovakia, that's right, yeah. They'll have one eye on that, and it's about going and doing their business properly, moving the ball fast, getting in the faces of the Georgians early, like the likes of England, Sweden and France did against us. Don't give them a moment. Don't give them a minute to be on the ball, to regroup, to create anything, and just get at them early and demoralise them, I guess, and try and get the goals scored, and then maybe give players some minutes and look at doing different things with a view to the next stage of these playoff games.
Well, those next stage of the playoff games is basically almost exactly a month. The 22nd of November and the 3rd of December is a two-legged playoff. It's between those dates, against Slovakia or Wales. So it's a final, actually. So I don't know, is it too... either way, you've got to prepare for a much bigger game against a much better team. Does Eileen Gleeson take this as an opportunity to run through less specific stuff for Georgia than more general principles that they've been honing over the last period of time? I guess I'm wondering, what's the point in spending time preparing for this Georgia team when actually you've massive fish to fry, which will basically retrospectively dictate whether or not the last couple of years have been a success or failure?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, yes, with bigger fish to fry, so to speak, but you also can't be disrespectful, and you have to go out and prepare properly and do your job, and we do expect them to do that job, and they should be able to do that job early enough in the game that they could maybe look at different things. I think when we look at the campaign against the last campaign against the so-called the stronger teams, we were probably a little bit more conservative. We played, with a more deeper block. We had 5-4-1 predominantly. But when we changed that, and I think Eileen's hand was forced a little bit against France when Kira Caruso wasn't available, and we sort of went with two up front, Julianne Russell and Leanne Kiernan, and the pace, of those two up front, and when it's obviously it's more difficult for opponents to deal with two players up front. So I think we need to start looking at that type of formation, and I don't expect us to be playing 5 at the back tomorrow in any way, shape, or form. But I think we need to be looking now at nailing down a more progressive formation where we're going to go at teams, we're going to press them high, we're going to give them something to worry about, our attacking players, and just to bed that in, I suppose, to the team and have that mentality for when we go into the game against Wales or Slovakia.
Hey, Sue, this is a slightly strange one for you here. So say, as expected, Ireland beat Georgia quite comfortably tomorrow night, and they're about 3 or 4-0 up after 20 minutes, just for argument's sake.
Yeah.
Should they have two options there. Should they continue and try and get double figures and make a statement result across Europe, or should they actually revert to a back five then in preparation for the Slovakia and Wales games and treat it almost like a de facto training session?
Yeah, well, I don't think we should be playing back five against Wales or Slovakia. By all means, against Sweden, England, and France, I would agree that we definitely need to do it at times. You have to be compact in defence. You have to have that low block. But I mean, we shouldn't be doing that against the likes of Wales and Slovakia, and that's no disrespect to them. But if you look at our players, you look at where our players are playing, you look at the experience we've had. We're a stronger team than both those nations, and we should be taking the game to them. So I think we should be using these two games against Georgia to do that, to move the ball quickly, to get little patterns of play going, little triangles, practice our set play. Get players up, get our forwards used to scoring goals, because we didn't score a lot. Let's face it, in the last campaign, we got 3 against France and 1 against England. So let's get our strikers and our forward players, our midfield players, used to doing what you would do when you're taking the game to an opponent. I think that's what I'd expect us to be doing tomorrow.
I can't recall a football manager from either side of the game who has had such an extreme start to her tenure in Eileen Gleeson, because in League B, they're 6 from 6. They finish in a goal difference of plus 18. They're wiping the floor with teams. Katie McCabe's probably in the form of her life internationally. And then they get the mother of all step-ups against, like you mentioned, England, France and Sweden as well.
Yeah.
It's tough for Eileen Gleeson, isn't it? Because there's no real consistent path. I mean, where is Ireland's level at the moment? Is it the League B, League A, or is it kind of League A and a half, if there was such a thing?
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough. I mean, as you said, the first campaign, we were wiping the floor with all those teams, and that's the way it should have been. Then we obviously step up a level, and yes, we were in League A, but don't forget, we were playing probably, was it 3 of the top maybe 6 teams in the world, not just in Europe. So, I would say we do belong in League A, not in the upper half of it, but I think, if we got a more favourable group, we certainly would pick up some wins along the way. But it has been a challenge, I suppose, because in those first games, we were playing like I would expect us to be playing now against Georgia, and then obviously we played the tougher teams, and you have to be a bit more conservative. But I would like to see we get through these games. We will get through these games, but I would like to see then that we're now looking at taking the game to either Wales or Slovakia, because we're well capable of beating those teams. And the last thing you want then is if you try to be conservative, and as you said yourself earlier, you get a dodgy referee's decision or the wind goes against you, and then the nerves settle in because of this big prize at the end, of the game. Then players maybe start questioning themselves. But I would like to see us be on the front foot in all the next 4 games and try and qualify for our first ever European finals.
Eileen Gleeson will have to contend without her stalwart Louise Quinn and her regular Megan Connolly, but probably the most standout omission tomorrow night will be the goalkeeper Courtney Brosnan, who's been ever present and so central to Ireland's success in recent years. So that leaves Gleeson with the option of Grace Maloney of London City Lionesses, Sophie Whitehouse of Charlton, and Katie Keane of Athlone Town. Who does she go with?
I haven't seen a lot of Sophie, to be honest, and I know Katie's had a great season in the league here, and she's currently with the under-19s. Grace Maloney has a huge amount of experience. I mean, she's been in the squad as long as when I was the coach. She's played at the top level in England. I would be surprised if she doesn't name Grace. But look, you never know. But whoever we have in between the sticks tomorrow, I really don't expect them to have a lot to do.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Courtney there, and thankfully it's this game that we're missing her for, not maybe in the next phase of the playoffs, because she was just, I think she's probably our player of the tournament, or the qualifying rounds, the last qualifying round. She kept the scoreline down in games. She was just excellent, and it's great to have a keeper like that.
I mentioned one of the 3 domestic representatives. The other is Eva Mangan from Cork City, and of course Julianne Russell, like you mentioned yourself, from Galway. You'd have seen the comments last week here on Kilduff, the then Athlone Town manager, lamenting the lack of representation from domestic leagues, and Eileen Gleeson defending her decision not to pick more players. Whose side of the argument would you tend to lean on there?
I think, first of all, I'm not really sure that Kieran was lamenting the fact that more of his players, because they won the league, weren't in the squad.
I think league players, he meant overall. I think the lack of representation domestically.
Perhaps, but when you're the international manager, you obviously you pick the best players, and of course the players that win the league or win the cup with the teams in Ireland, they'll be the best players in the country. But as Eileen pointed out, there is a huge difference playing professional football and playing, what is it, semi-professional football in Ireland. There's a huge difference in the level, training probably twice a day, having all the facilities available to you that a professional club does, and playing at a higher level too. And that's just the reality of it. My understanding of Kieran's comments were that he would like more dialogue between, whether that's Eileen or whether that's the head of women's football, with his club and other clubs. And whether that's going on or not, I don't know. But all I can say is, when I was in that position ahead of women's football, there was constant dialogue with the clubs, and you have to have it. I mean, you're there to grow the game. The FAI and the people involved in women's football are there to grow the game domestically. And your key stakeholders are your clubs and your leagues and your players, and your top league is one of your top stakeholders. So if there's not dialogue, there absolutely should be dialogue. But in terms of and that dialogue would include, telling the coaches what's missing or what the players need, or what the benchmark is. So all those discussions would should be going on, if they're not going on, and I don't know whether they are or not. But with regards to picking the players who are playing in a professional environment, if you have two players that are similar, playing the same position, and they're, one's as good as the other, you're probably going to go with the player in the professional environment, because they're generally going to be fitter. They'll have that longer exposed to strength and conditioning, for over a longer period of time. So all those little things come into it as well. But look, the league here is improving, and it has taken huge steps, and hopefully we'll see it going fully professional maybe in the years to come. And these type of questions then won't be there, because more of our players will stay at home, and our own league will grow from strength to strength.
Is that realistic, that we could have a professional league in Ireland?
I don't know, to be honest with you. We've been talking about it for years. And I always look at the men's side. Sometimes you see some of the men's clubs struggle as well. And we've just seen it this year, unfortunately, with Dundalk. So I think it's still a long way away. I think a bigger, probably, or a more prevalent question is, can we fill the gap there to prepare players for the national team, as in have an under-23 international team? And again, it's something that's been talked about for 15 years now, and that's really badly needed, because you look at our under-19s who qualified for the European Championship finals this year, and that's a great advantage for them and a great experience for them. But Katie Keenan is the only one from that squad who has made the jump up to the national team, because there's such a huge gap. So those players and other young players like those, they need something else to take them to the next step and to bridge that gap to national team level, because there is a big step up.
Is there an opportunity for the FAI to think somewhat radically about this, and not hope that the clubs will be the ones who bring professionalism, but to have some kind of central contract system? Like, if you look at the transformation in the rugby teams' fortunes from being complete no-hopers to actually beating the All Blacks, it took 18 months, but it was full-time professionals, centralised coaching, everybody out in Abbottstown, day in, day out, hot-housed, and the progress that you can make is radical when you put money behind it. Now, I understand money in the FAI is currently a difficult issue, but what if they had 11 full-time players or 20 full-time players who played in the league but were paid for by the FAI? Obviously, you need some kind of draft. You need some way of linking the players with the clubs. But that might be more realistic in the short term. And I don't know if FIFA would allow that, but...
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, that's up to the federation, the FAI, if they decide to do that. And again, I always feel like I'm sitting here saying this stuff we spoke about back in my time, but it actually was. And it's a no-brainer. And when you see, that's the way England started out years ago, before their league was at the level it's at now, to compete with the top leagues in Europe at the time, which were in Germany, which were in Sweden. And it wasn't even France, Germany and Sweden, Norway. They were the three top leagues at the time. And England couldn't compete with those players because they didn't have the clubs to support and sustain the players. So they had them on central contracts. And that involved paying them so they didn't have to work. They could train then every day. They trained regionally with the national team coaches, and then that was supplementing the training at the clubs, because, as I mentioned, the clubs weren't at that professionalism at that level yet where they were training every day. And absolutely is something we could easily do here. to try and bridge that gap and to try to supplement the club environment. And the club seems to be very willing here to try and help the national team grow. And it has to be a partnership. It works in tandem. Certainly on the women's side of the game, it does work in tandem. So for sure, that's something that I think should really be looked at. Again, we had scholarships for some of the players way back in the day, but it was quite minimal and it wasn't enough. But yeah, money seems to be the problem, unfortunately, in the FAI, and it seems to continue to be the issue. But something like that would definitely transform the home-based players and bring them up to the level that's needed, and also allow them then to play in our own league here.
All right, Sue, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.